get started. So good afternoon. My name is Amanda Jarvis, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 27 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one consulting services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, HR Basics and Post-COVID HR Trends, is presented by the Virginia SBDC Network. We are recording today's presentation, and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the large number of participants today, everyone's microphone is muted, but if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box. We have also enabled the live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for today's session. Mary Walter Arthur is a senior HR consultant at Brighter Strategies. Mary Walter has been providing human resources consulting services to businesses for over 30 years. Her experience in global human resources, operations, talent management, leadership coaching, and organizational development provide her with the tools needed to deliver HR results to both earlier stage organizations and organizations in transition. Additionally, she provides expert guidance on HR or on establishing the HR functions as a strategic business partner, building customer-centric HR infrastructure for companies, operational assessment and HR audits of existing HR functions. As an HR consultant, she brings the perspectives and lessons learned from the positions she held throughout her career in global HR leadership roles in manufacturing, public relations, technology, and nonprofit organizations. Mary Walter has a master's in human resources development from the George Washington University and a Bachelor of Arts from Centre College. She holds a certificate Global Human Resources Management from Villanova University and was a Leadership Philadelphia Fellow. And sorry about the printer in my office. I'm sharing with somebody else. So now it's my pleasure to mute myself and introduce our presenter for today, Mary Walter.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Let's make sure that everybody can see this. Okay, super. All right. Thanks again, Amanda. Hi, everybody. Welcome. That whole thing about my background means that I have been in human resources for like 300 years. I have seen it all, heard it all. Nothing shocks me anymore, which is interesting. But anyway, but so glad y'all are here. And just a couple things before we get started. One is I'm getting over bronchitis, and so I'm coughing a lot. I do apologize for that. I hope it's not too annoying. Also, I am babysitting my daughter's 2 cats. So currently I have 4 cats in my house. So don't be surprised if you hear a crash or if a cat jumps up on my desk. I will try to remove it if I can, but that's life with COVID. But anyway, okay, so hoping everybody can see my slides. We're going to go through this. I'm going to give you a lot of information, and some of it's really high level, some of it's down in the weeds. Please don't hesitate to link with me up on LinkedIn. Reach out to me. Here's my email address. I know that Amanda is going to share these slides with you after today. So anything I can do to help, please, let me know. Let me see. There we go. Okay, so this is just what Amanda said. I am currently with a group called Brighter Strategies. We're a small HR OD consulting firm. We work with mission-driven organizations. We work with some really cool nonprofits and some other organizations, and we help them improve their operations, their HR functions, their organizational functions, so that they can work more efficiently and then do all the great stuff that they do, which is very cool. So, all righty. So here's what we're going to talk about generally. I'm going to go through some labor law for y'all. We're going to talk about employee classification. We'll talk about recruitment. We're going to talk about the impact of COVID. And we all know what COVID has done to the workplace, but we're going to talk about some of the impact that has happened. I've got a few miscellaneous things I want to go through, and then I want to make sure that I leave plenty of time for questions. All right, so like I said, I'm going to give you a lot of information, and my hope is that you're able to take a few nuggets away. You're not going to remember it all. Not all of it's going to pertain to you and your organization, but hopefully you can pick up a few things that you can take back to your organization. And I would also say to you, use what makes sense for you and your organization. Just because another organization is doing it doesn't mean it's right for you. And a lot of things I'm going to tell you, if you're a small organization, if you only have 5 or 6 employees, or even less than that, you may wonder why this is applicable to you, but actually it is. It's applicable to anybody at any size. So I hope you're able to take away a few things from this presentation today. So we're going to dive right in. So we're going to talk about human resource basics and federal labor law. And the reason we're going to go through this at the moment is that the size of your organization, the number of employees that you have, determine what federal laws you've got to comply with. And some federal laws apply to all employers, regardless of size, and some only apply to larger organizations, but it's a good practice to follow them anyway. One of the impacts of COVID is that we've got our wandering employees now, where employees have moved all over the country. So something that we're not going to have a chance to talk about today, but you need to think about is wherever your office is located and where your employees now live, you've got to take a look at those state and local laws also. All right, so, but we're not going to talk about that today. So anyway, one thing I will say to you about federal labor law, when you get a chance, Google federal labor law by employee size, and you will be able to pull up, I know it's hard to see, but there are documents out there that list every law by number of employees, and it's really handy. In fact, I'm going to use it today as we go through some of these laws because I'm in the practice, I see them every day, but I don't always remember what they are. Some are a bit more obscure than others. So we're going to go through them quickly just so you're aware. So labor law that's applicable to every employer, no matter what size. Immigration Reform and Control Act, that is making sure that you only hire people who are eligible to work in the United States. That's your I-9 form that you have all new hires fill out when they start working. Equal Pay Act, it makes sure that you pay everyone the same amount of money for the same job. Employee Polygraph, it prohibits you from using lie detector tests, whether you're hiring somebody or in any other part of employment, unless there is a real specific valid reason. Fair Labor Standards Act, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. That's a really big law. That's what governs overtime, exempt versus non-exempt, minimum wage, child labor laws. That's a really big one and something that you need to be aware of. OSHA is making sure that you provide a safe workplace for all employees. ERISA, it sets minimum standards for employee benefit plans to make sure that everyone receives the same if you're providing that for your employees. All right, so USERRA is that prohibits employers from discriminating against anybody on the basis of membership in the armed services. So if somebody's in the reserves or whatever, you can't discriminate against that. Consumer credit, it prevents you as an employer from discharging anyone based on their credit. All right, and we'll talk about that. But if you're still doing credit checks when you're hiring people, I would stop and think about the reason you're doing that. Is it really valid? Do you really need to do that? And then the Jury Systems Act prohibits you from discharging or taking any kind of adverse action against employees who are summoned to jury duty. And one of the things I'm seeing in a lot of organizations is that their jury duty benefit says they'll pay for, say, up to 3 to 5 days of jury duty. And if you get called longer, you've got to use your own vacation time. If you do that, I would say to you, stop and take a look at that. It's not an employee's fault. If they're called to jury duty, they shouldn't be penalized for that. All right, so 15 or more employees. The reason I have this with an asterisk is asterisk, I can't pronounce the word, is that even though it's really only employers with 15 or more employees need to follow this, but these are really great laws that no matter what your size is, you should be following them. So ADA means that it prohibits employers from discriminating against anyone based on their disabilities in employment practices. GINA, Genetic Information Act, prohibits employers from discriminating against employees or applicants based on their genetic information. That's also tied into HIPAA and making sure that if you have an employee's confidential health information, that it stays confidential. Pregnancy Discrimination Act prohibits you from discriminating based on pregnancy, childbirth, any of that kind of related thing. And then Title VII, our huge, wonderful Title VII, which prohibits employers from discriminating in the workplace based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. And states now have expanded that. So make sure that depending on the state that you're in, or again, the state that some of your employees are in, you look at what's covered. Typically, states will do more than just the federal government. So for those with 20 or more employees, you've got the age discrimination, prohibits employers from discriminating against employees who are age 40 or older. And then COBRA, if you're offering health insurance to your employees, this requires you to provide a continuation of health benefits. Again, I have this marked. Don't wait till you're 20 employees. Don't discriminate against anybody who's 40 or older, period. COBRA is a different thing. It is a cost to the organization, and you want to take a look at that. But don't discriminate against people. Not that you would, but don't discriminate against people, even if it's not required by law. All right, so 50 or more. FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act. It requires employers to provide eligible employees with unpaid job-protected leave. Now, I will say to you all, I work with a lot of nonprofits. A lot of small nonprofits want to offer this as a benefit because typically they don't pay as well as like a big corporation would. But I would say to you, as nice as it is to offer that, think about what the impact is on you if you're small of losing an employee for 12 weeks. What's the impact? If you only have 6 or 7 employees and you lose an employee for 12 weeks and you've got to hold their position open, what's the impact on you? So that's something I would say think about. And then the Affordable Care Act is applicable employers must provide affordable minimum health care coverage. All right, 100 or more, the WARN Act. That means if you're going to lay off people, you've got to provide a 60-day advance notice. If you're going to have like a large plant-wide layoff. And then EEO means if this number of employees, or if you're a government contractor, you need to fill out what's called the EEO report, which provides information to EEOC about employment data and what the makeup is, what the race is, ethnicity, gender, job category, wage and hour. So that's a lot to digest, but the point of this is to say to you, just be aware that there are some laws that cover you no matter what your size, some laws that don't kick in until you're a certain size, but you should still follow them. And then some that don't kick in until you're a certain size. And you can decide whether or not you want to follow those when you're smaller. All right, employee classification. This goes back to the Fair Labor Standards Act that we were just talking about. This is a pretty fabulous act, and it establishes minimum wage, overtime pay, overtime laws. It makes the determination whether an employee is salaried or hourly. So if you're hiring someone, you can't just arbitrarily decide that you don't want to pay them overtime, so you're going to pay them $20,000 a year and not pay them overtime. This governs what that looks like. And so there are guidelines, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it also covers that any hours worked over 40 hours in a work week are paid 1.5 times their hourly wage for overtime. Something that you can look at as an employer is whether you want to cover sick leave or PTO as part of this 40 hours. You can make that decision, but you've got to have a policy that says how you calculate the 40 hours. So to determine if somebody's exempt or non-exempt, it depends on their duties and their responsibilities. So if you don't have job descriptions that are written about each position, you should, even if you're small. That's going to help you determine whether this position is eligible for overtime or not. So there are a lot of requirements that you, and if you go online, you can see them in detail, but there's a salary threshold, and states now are different. Like New York has increased its salary threshold. So if somebody is hired in at a certain amount, if it's above the threshold, then you've got to pay them a salary. Or the opposite, you've got to pay them overtime. So you've got to be aware of what those laws are. Also, white collar duties, there's a list of those online, and then independent judgment. If someone in a position has to make independent decisions, they're considered exempt. So just be aware, make sure you're very careful about this, and as you grow, come in and audit every so often. Audit your positions, look at the job duties, look at their job descriptions, and make sure that you are still following the correct guidelines when it comes to FLSA. So classifying employees is really critical. Are they full-time or are they part-time? And if they're part-time, what is your policy about providing benefits? You need to have that written out. Is it somebody who works 30 hours and above, 25 hours above? You decide, but you've got to have it in writing. There's temporary, somebody who starts on one day, ends on another day. Typically, it's project-based. Interns, always pay your interns, please. I think gone are the days that we have free interns. Always pay your interns. It's the kind, fair thing to do. And then seasonal. If you're a country club or, a restaurant and you're hiring seasonal workers, make sure that you clarify that. Always provide an offer letter and always clarify this information in that offer letter. There are a number of things to put in an offer letter, like the name of the position, the dates of the position, the salary, whether it's exempt or non-exempt, and making sure you put in your at-will statement and that you say that you only hire people who are eligible to work in the United States. All right, so independent contractors. We get a lot of questions about this, and a lot of people say to me how much they just want to treat independent contractors like employees. No, don't at all. Those of us who are independent contractors don't want to be treated as employees. We are self-employed for a reason. We like what we do. We like project-based work. We don't want to be part of the employee thing. And as an organization, you can get into a lot of trouble if you hold contractors accountable for things that you hold your employees to, like policies and that kind of thing. You can certainly do like a little contractor handbook. We do it at Brighter Strategies, where we say, no matter what your status, whether you're a contractor or not, we are still holding you to policies like respectful workplace, anti-harassment, ADA, those kind of things. But you don't provide health benefits, you don't provide holidays, and so that's what the mark of a contractor is. You also don't provide equipment to a contractor at all, and the contractor invoices the organization. You don't put them on the payroll. One of the things to look out for, and I have seen this quite a bit, is that employees will look at a contractor and see that they make a higher hourly rate, which is typically what a contractor does, and they want to convert to being a contractor status. If you're going to do that and they're going to do exactly the same job, then they can't be a contractor. A contractor is project-based, start to finish projects. They work on their own time. You may set the deadline, but they work when they want to work. And so just be aware of that. It's really important. All right, let's talk recruitment, which is crazy right now. I mean, I'm hearing horror stories, and it's interesting because we've been talking about the war for talent now for years, even prior to COVID, but suddenly now it's even harder. So what is really critical now for you as an employer is, who are you as an organization? What do you provide? What's it like for somebody to work for you? Why does somebody want to work for you, and why do they want to stay? No longer is it, somebody should be thankful because you give them a job. Those days are gone. So what's your mission? What's your vision? What's your strategy? People want to know, and they want to be part of that. And I will say to you that I used to work for a very large Swedish manufacturer, and we manufactured toilet paper and adult diapers. And that may sound really silly as a mission, but I'm telling you, you've never seen a more dedicated group of employees in your life, because we knew that we were making the best toilet paper, the best adult diapers, and we were improving the world with this stuff. I mean, we were all so excited about that. So don't think that your mission has to be something that you're saving the world for, but it's got to be something that people go, yeah, I really care about this and I really want to work for this organization. What sets you apart from other organizations? Why does somebody want to come to work for you as opposed to another organization? So talent management. This is part of recruitment. In fact, recruitment is more than just posting a job and filling the role. It's driving performance through people management. Again, it's not just hiring somebody, putting them in their job and telling them to go do their job. This is everything that you provide as an employer that makes employees want to stay and work for you, and they're motivated and they're happy and they're productive. And bottom line is, they help you as an organization meet your goals and objectives and be successful. And that's why we're all here. So take a look at your performance management process, training and development, career growth opportunities, compensation, benefits, work-life balance, interesting work assignments. And I'll say to you about career growth. I know that a lot of us that are in small organizations, there's no room for a career ladder. And that's okay, because then you take a look at what skills can you teach your employees? What does an employee want to do over the next 5 years? Let's say they want to get to a certain point, they want to learn something new. So what assignments can you give them that may not be taking them up a career ladder, but it's expanding their skills? And that's huge. That's so huge for employees. So that's providing opportunities for employees to learn and grow, all right? And encourage conversations between managers and employees. It is a manager's job to make sure that every employee is successful. And that's kind of a new thing now. We used to not say that, but nowadays we're saying, if you want to keep your employees, make them productive and happy, build that relationship between managers and employees, your employees will be happier, they'll be more engaged. All right, so let's talk recruitment. As I said earlier, it's more than just posting a job and filling it. It's the process of finding the right people, managing the workforce, and optimizing productivity so that you as a business can meet your goals. It's based on workforce planning and supported by talent management systems. So even if you're 3 employees, you should be looking at workforce planning. What do you need right now versus where would you want to go as an organization? And what skills and employees do you think you're going to need 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road? Are you going to grow that internally, or do you know that in 5 years you're going to need to hire from the outside? That's workforce planning. Doesn't matter what size you are, it's a really great exercise to do. All right, so recruitment. I know this will be the 3rd time I've said this, sorry. It's more than just posting a job and having people apply for it. First of all, please do not post the job description. A job description is an internal document that you use. A job posting is something that you put on Indeed or LinkedIn or somewhere, and it says, come work for us, we're fabulous, and this is why you need to come work for us. This is who we're looking for, this is the skill set we need, and this is why we're fabulous. And click here to look at our website, and you'll see how happy our employees are. Posting is your splashy marketing, please come talk to us kind of thing. So you want to make sure when you're doing recruiting, you have a standard and equitable process. It's written down and everybody knows what they need to do. You know, what exactly do you need in this new position or in this position for a new employee? What skills, what experience? You want to develop a pool of applicants. You want to comply with all federal, state, and local laws. And I will tell you from a recruiter standpoint, if I'm posting a job and I'm getting hundreds of resumes, the way recruiters tend to do it is they weed out people who aren't qualified. It's kind of this kind of thing. I don't know if you can see my hands, but it's like, okay, let me weed out who's not qualified and let me get back to the ones who are. All right. So what's your brand? Why does somebody want to work for you? How are you treating every candidate during this process? So let's say that you talk to 15 people, you do 15 phone screens, you interview 5 people, you choose 1. You want those 14 people who spoke to you, who didn't get the job, you want them to go, wow, I didn't get the job. I'm really bummed. What an amazing organization. And I'm going to keep applying for jobs at this organization. That's what you want. That's the candidate experience, because not only will they tell their friends, but they're going to tell other people about how fabulous you are. And that's your branding. And that's what you need to do to attract people and to fight with everybody else who's hiring employees. You want people to want to come to work for you and know about you before they apply for a job. All right, so I won't go through this whole lot, but steps. Workforce planning, making sure you've got a good job description. What's your brand? Post. If you've got a number of employees, making sure that they have the opportunity to apply for a position also. What's your process for interviewing? What's your process for decision making? It's not just your gut. It's, did you gather enough hard facts to make a good educated decision? What's the offer process like? What does your offer letter include? If you're not sure, get somebody to take a look at it, an HR person, and we can help you with that. And then it's orientation and onboarding. It's not just filling out forms, but it's making sure that your new employee has everything that they need to be successful throughout their career with you. So this is the same kind of stuff. Just make sure that you are very careful in your process, very methodical. You have it written down. Anybody who's doing interviews, they're trained in what they can say and what they can't say. And as much as we love employee referrals, and we do, you want to make sure that they are going through exactly the same process as everybody else. So if somebody comes to me and says they've got somebody who they want us to interview, and that person is qualified, I'm going to put them in the pool of qualified candidates and treat them just like everybody else. And that is really, really critical. All right, so I know I went through that really quickly, but we can talk about it afterwards if you want. All right, COVID. Wow. Okay, so we know it's changed the way we work now forever. There are a lot of good things that have come out of this. It's interesting, those of us who are in HR who for years have said, it doesn't matter where somebody is sitting, it's are they meeting their deadlines? Are they doing what they need to be doing? I don't care if they're sitting on a beach, but they better be doing their job and they better be responding to me. And I think that one of the things that COVID has showed us is that people can work remotely in a lot of situations. Some cases they can't, and we totally get that. But it's also, I think, helped us as organizations take a look at our employees and start treating them as people now again, and looking at our business and looking at how we do things. And I think that's really amazing. But caring for people is huge now. And, you know, we've talked about employee wellness for a long, long time. But we've talked about it in the way of it's a benefit. You know, we all provide employee assistance programs, or we have these great wellness programs that we offer our employees, which is great, but it is now more than a benefit. It's taking care of our employees. It's understanding that now, because of COVID, we all have experienced different things and different traumas and different stresses. And so without sharing or knowing private information, it's understanding that we're all coming from different spaces now. And that's really huge. And it's treating employees as people first and workers second, because that's going to get you a lot. It's going to help with productivity. You want happy employees. You want to maximize individual strengths. Stop talking about shortcomings all the time. So I do a lot with performance management, and I have absolutely changed my tune about getting away from ratings and away from telling everybody what they do wrong, but going to more of a, here are your goals and objectives for you for this year. I'm your manager. How can I help you get there? I am here to help you. And that's more performance management. It's a positive, impactful, it's not demoralizing. And that's a change now, which I think is really, really fabulous. So that feedback, that building the relationship between managers and employees, it's huge. It's really, really important. And that's something that I think has really changed. It's understanding that, you know, like for snow days, which is kind of interesting, especially in the DC area, you know, we always follow the federal government, and it's always been a thing about, well, we don't come in if it's a snow day. Nowadays, we all have laptops, if that's the kind of work we do. And we know that we can take our laptops home and we can continue working. And that's just as an aside, that's a policy you need to take a look at, that a lot of companies are saying now, that no longer are we saying we're shut down, we're saying watch the weather, take your laptop at home and work from home. But you also want to be conscious of people maybe who have small children. And if the schools are closed, how are you going to handle that? Well, they need to take a day off to take care of their kids. You know, what's that going to look like? So making sure that you remember that employees are people and that they all come now with different things and they've gone through different things. So I'll get off that soapbox, but I think that's something to really think about as an employer. So we're working differently in a lot of cases. And I do know that not every organization has the luxury of people working from home. I understand that. If you do, though, I would absolutely recommend that you have everybody fill out a working remotely agreement that says things like, and if you haven't already, you need to do this. It says, individually, we are providing a safe and healthy workspace. We're following, you know, OSHA guidelines when it comes to our office. We are available within core hours of say 9 to 5. We will always respond unless we've told our manager we're not available during that time. Those kind of things that you have an agreement with each employee to say, here are the guidelines from working remotely. The cool thing is too, is that we've shown that we can change, we can be flexible and we can be agile. And that's pretty amazing. And organizations have been fabulous. And it's funny, I work with a lot of small groups and everybody said, you know, we didn't think COVID would last this long. So we didn't put into place any working remotely agreements, or we didn't set any guidelines because it never dawned on us that this would continue. So if you didn't do that, and that's fine, make sure you do it now. Look at what you're allowing your employees to do, but make sure you put some guidelines in place just to prevent problems. And build on what worked well during the pandemic. And if it didn't work well, take a look at that, talk to your employees and figure out how to do things better. So how do you want to function now? If you were always in an office and you're saying to everybody has to come back in the office full-time, period. Take a look at that. Do you really need to do that? If you do, and you may, based on your work, but if you can't prove that your work can't get done that way, you're going to start losing employees a lot. They're going to leave because a lot of organizations now have gone to either fully remote or hybrid remote, which is really great. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to change again in 6 months to a year. Maybe next year things will be different, but think about, can you continue as a business and allow your employees to work remotely or work as a hybrid? And what does that look like? And how do you keep them safe in your office, in your workspace, in your facility? What are you doing to make sure that your employees are safe? Brighter Strategies, we've got an agreement that we send to our clients that say, if we're going to come into your workspace and we're going to say do an all-day thing, these are the things that we require. We require testing, we require masks, we require this, that, whatever. But we're setting those guidelines because what we're running into is that, you know, we've all kind of gotten lax about it, and we'll go into a space and do a presentation and then be exposed to COVID. So it hasn't gone away. And that's what we've got to remember. So mission, vision, and values. Why are you around? What are you doing as a business? What do you care about? What do you take care of? What are your values? You know, what is it that you do? Again, it can be making toilet paper, but it can be the best daggone toilet paper in the world. What can you say to your employees and potential employees as to why you're around and why you do what you do? People want to care about what they do. No longer is it just doing a job because they need a job. It's, I want to work somewhere where I really love what they do and why they do it. So think about that. If you haven't looked at your mission, vision, values recently, maybe this is a good time to take a look at it and talk to your employees, get their feedback on what they think it is. But it's really, really important now. So technology, as you all know, increased use. Oh my goodness gracious. We're all getting tired of Zoom, although I love it because it keeps me working from home, which I love. But we're using now all kinds of technology. You now have got to require employees to learn the basics of different technology. And that's something that you need to think about for guidelines. What do you require now your employees to know when it comes to technology in order to do their job remotely? Communicate your expectations. We do it too. We say, okay, within the first month, we expect you to be able to set up a meeting with Zoom, do breakout rooms with Zoom. We expect you to be able to use this software, this software. So set your expectations down in writing. And remember that everybody learns differently. And those of us who are older like me don't necessarily learn as quickly. And if we're not using the technology every day, we forget. And it's embarrassing to ask questions. So don't embarrass anybody. Make sure you've got resources for people who can help answer questions and do it without embarrassing anybody. That's a huge change, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool, but just remember that that is an added step into things now. So wandering employees, I mentioned this earlier. These are employees who moved during COVID. I'm one of them. I moved from Northern Virginia to Richmond to be closer to my family. COVID kind of got tired of being alone during COVID, and so I came down here. But remember that if really an employee should come to you and say, hey, I'm thinking about moving to this state, so that you can take a look at what those requirements are. But you need to be aware of everywhere your employees live. You need to be aware of all the state wage and hour guidelines. You need to report every employee to the state that they live in. I just did that this morning with a couple of new hires. I've got to go in and report to different states that we've just hired people who live in those different states. You know, make sure that you are aware. And a lot of states, and actually some localities, have different guidelines when it comes to sick leave or vacation or jury duty or any of that kind of stuff. So you've got to, interesting, some states only require you to follow them if you have a certain number of employees who live in that state. Others say even if you have one employee, you've got to follow that. So be aware of what each state requires. And remember, and I'm not an accountant, but remember that you've got to file taxes in that state. So that's why I say to employers, communicate with your employees and say, if you're thinking about moving to another state, come talk to us first, because you all need to look at the impact of that. And then you've got to work out guidelines about, or if you need everybody in the office or in your office location, does that employee have to pay to get there or not? What's that agreement? So for me, I live in Richmond now. I had to be in DC last week. I paid for my own train ride up to DC and back. All right, that's part of me moving out of the DMV area. But you need to set those guidelines first. And I do know that what has happened during COVID is a lot of employees have moved without telling their employers. So absolutely find that out. When it comes to salaries, cost of living, that kind of thing, changes to wages because it's a different standard of living in states. Every compensation expert I've talked to is, everybody's looking at this right now. I would not reduce somebody's income, their salary, because they've moved to a state with a lower cost of living, especially if they're doing the same job. But I would sit back and wait and kind of see what the prevailing guidelines are going to be. But don't penalize somebody for moving to another state, especially if they're doing exactly the same job. So for instance, I do exactly the same job that I would do in Northern Virginia or living in California. I don't have to be in an employee's office or an employer's office to do my job. Or if I do, I drive myself up and I'm there for a couple of days. As I mentioned, take a look at the state sick leave. What are the requirements? FMLA. DC has its own Family Leave Act now. Make sure that you understand what the reporting requirements are for the state. And as I said, make sure you work out before somebody moves to another state. If you require that everybody's in the same location once a quarter, are you going to pay for them to come back, or do they have to pay for them to come back? Make that decision. There's no wrong or right answer, but make sure that you put that in writing and that you treat everybody the same. If you tell one person you're going to pay for them to come back, you need to do it the same for others. And take a look at reimbursement for expenses. If somebody's moved to another state and they have to do something that costs money, are you going to pay for that or not? Make that decision before they move if you can. All right, so the Great Resignation. We've all heard about it, right? Everybody quit. Not everybody quit. A lot of people quit. But what we're finding is there's now the great regret. And so people who left are going, maybe I didn't want to leave after all. And so people are coming back. What's interesting is that now we have these boomerang employees. It used to be when somebody left an organization, typically it wasn't on the best of terms. And if somebody wanted to come back, we'd shut them down and not welcome them back. This is a change. This is a positive change with COVID. So if somebody leaves your organization and they say that they want to come back, if they were a good employee or a good performer, think about it. Don't just shut them down. But we call them boomerang employees. And in a lot of cases, it's really fabulous to have a boomerang employee back because they've got the institutional knowledge, their learning curve will be shorter, and they're going to be happy to come back because they've chosen to come back. And remember that candidates have a choice. They can go where they want to go. So when you're interviewing somebody, remember that they are also interviewing you. All right, and that's so important. All right, so returning to the office. All right, I've kind of really talked about this already, but why are you asking people to come back to the office if you were remote? If you were never remote, if you had to work in your space, that's one thing. But if you didn't, why are you insisting that employees come back full time? Think about that. It may be that you have to, but it may be that you could ease back in or do hybrid. Be flexible. Remember that employees, if they have the right manager and the manager has a great relationship with them and employees know what's expected of them, they can work anywhere. All right. So make sure if you're asking them to come back, how are you keeping them safe? How are you dealing with visitors or vendors who come into the office? How do you keep everybody safe? No longer, which is really great because I was on my soapbox about this one. I always hate it when somebody comes into the office and they go, well, I've got the flu, but I've got things to do. No, go home. Gone are those days. And that's what you need to communicate to employees is do not come to work sick at all, period. Take your laptop if you've got a laptop and work from home. And if your employees don't have laptops, you may want to take a look at that. That may be an investment that's worth the money because somebody can work anywhere. Think about commuting costs right now, gas. It's huge, it's terrible. So what does that cost employees now that it didn't used to? My daughter just took a job in New York City. She moved from California to New York. Where she works now gives them a daily $75 Uber stipend, which is amazing. It's amazing. And they did that all through COVID, and they're doing it now because they all work shifts. And she typically doesn't use that much every day, but they have a business account. And when she needs an Uber, which is every day because she works an early morning shift, she does an Uber through the business account. That is an amazing, amazing benefit. So think about those kind of things. So it makes her go, okay, I'm okay going in the office because I don't have to incur this cost. So remember about the employee experience. What are they going to, when you bring them in, are you just going to throw them in and tell them to do their jobs? Are you going to help them make sure they're successful? Remember that a lot of new hires haven't met people before. So that's something new. And remember that everybody's had a unique experience during COVID. So think about with vaccinations and testing, what are you going to require? And you can change that depending on the CDC, but you got to communicate. If you're going to require vaccinations, are you going to pay for them? Are you going to give people time off to go get vaccinations? What about testing? What about visitors? What are your policies? Make sure that you have this in writing. So ADA, one of the things that we're finding is that there are more requests for accommodation. People don't want to go back in the office. So I won't go into a lot of detail with this, but remember that as an employer, it's not up to you to decide if somebody has a valid reason for requesting accommodation. It's looking at the medical information that you receive from the person's doctor and figuring out, can you accommodate this without undue hardship on your business? We are finding that this has increased quite a bit. All right, want to be mindful of the time and give you all plenty of time to ask questions. Remember that performance management is really, really important now, especially as people work remotely. Do employees know what's expected of them? Are they getting timely feedback from their managers? Do they have a good relationship with their managers and employees? And please stop using ratings, please. They're so demoralizing and they're so subjective and can get you in a lot of trouble, and they're just not worth it. There are too many positive ways to give feedback and to help employees grow. We've gotten some questions about layoffs versus terminations. A layoff is when employees are removed from a business because there's something going on with the business. They're not fired because of performance, they're laid off. They may or may not be brought back into the business. A termination involves letting an employee go due to performance issues. In both cases, there are legal guidelines that need to be followed. So just be aware of that. A lot of hot topics going forward, and we've touched on all of these: attracting and retaining talent, diversity building. Finally, people are paying attention to that. Leadership development, workforce training, healthy work culture, work-life balance, remote work, and then change management. How do you as an organization deal with change? And can you do it well, easily, and can you be flexible? Just a quick thing, depending on your size, you may not need HR help. It used to be that I waited until an organization was like 50 employees, and I would say, you don't need HR help until then. Now it's a lot smaller. I'd say if somebody's 20 to 30 employees, they need HR help, and it may not be full time, but there's so many complexities now that you do need help, and you need to be aware of laws, and you need to write down policies. And there are a lot of people like myself out there who understand what needs to be done and can help you. So don't be afraid to ask questions and ask for help. So just in closing, do stay informed of employment law. It's your job to make sure that you are aware of the laws. Talk to experts, ask people like myself, talk to them about what's going on. Make sure that you treat your employees fairly and equitably. So important. Be an organization that employees want to work for. Why does somebody want to come to work for you, and why do they want to stay? Be prepared to change and adjust like you had to do with COVID, and ask the experts if you have questions. So that is, Amanda, that is it. I hope I left enough time for questions.
That is great. Thank you so much. We do have a few questions coming in. In the meantime, while I'm answering the questions, everybody, I went ahead and launched our webinar evaluation. If you have a moment, go ahead and take the time to fill that out as we're answering the questions, and let us know what other topics you might be interested in related to this HR issues in the future. So this question, the first one, is from one of our counselors here at the SPDC. Some people who recently filed their LLC have gotten mail that says they must follow OSHA guidance and to pay $250 to be in compliance with OSHA. Is this a scam? Can you be in compliance on your own without paying a company to do it?
Wow. I have never heard about that. So my first guess would be it's a scam. Do y'all remember how supply companies would call and try to get us to spend hundreds of dollars on supplies? That was probably the 80s. But I would tell them to ask other people in other organizations. I have never heard about that. And I have an LLC. I've got my own company and I have never had to do that. So I would say tread carefully and ask questions, but it sounds like a scam to me.
Thank you so much for that. Do you have a sample contractor template or handbook that you could share, or some resources maybe?
Let me think. You know where I get a lot of my information is from SHRM, which is Society for HR Management. Now, and I would say to you as an organization, it's only a couple $100 to join every year, and it gives you access to job descriptions and policies and handbooks, and that's worth it. I think it's worth, no matter what your size, it gives you access to that. Certainly, you know, if you're working on something, I'm happy to take a look at it, but I don't have any samples myself that I could share. But think about, go onto SHRM and take a look at it. But that is worth the money because it just provides all kinds of resources.
Great, thanks. This person noticed that you have a positive view of your old manufacturing company. What did you like about them, and can you provide examples?
Absolutely. It was funny because years ago when my daughter was small, I had my own business. I was on my own for about 12 years. And this group was a client of mine. I was lucky enough to start working with them, based out of Stockholm, but they had a big US presence. And I worked with them for a couple of years. And one day they came to me and said, we'd love for you to come join us and run our talent management for North America and South America. And I loved it because I love working for a global organization. And even if it means I have to wake up 3 a.m. sometimes and sit in on a call, the fact that I'm sitting on a call with people around the globe is wonderful. I love the fact that if I went to a sales meeting, you've never seen a group of people get more excited about toilet paper in your life. And to this day, if y'all see the Torque logo in a public bathroom, that's the company I worked for. And so it was that kind of, yes, we're making toilet paper and adult diapers, but man, oh man, this is fun and we're happy. And it was that kind of environment. And we celebrated wins and we celebrated employees. And it was just a really happy place. And if we were in a meeting and somebody got really spun up about something, one of us would joke and we'd go, it's just toilet paper, calm down. You know, but it was that positive, fun, we couldn't wait to get into the office kind of attitude that was just wonderful. So yes, it was loads of fun. I loved it.
Thank you. The next one is, can you provide resources to help businesses address work conflicts, investigations, and what to do next, aside from termination?
Wow. Yeah, I do a lot of investigations. Email me, get my email address and email me, and let me see what's out there. I use a format that I got off of SHRM. It's a really simple format when I do investigations. But email me and let me see if I have something I can send you. Okay.
Thanks. I have an employee who is already paid top of the scale and says her and her friends discuss salary and she expects a raise. Her year is up and I will give a raise, but what is a typical raise? We are a private medical office and get paid by insurance contract, and our payments have not gone up. She's told me that it is an employee's market. I feel like employees are holding employers hostage.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here's the thing. A couple of things. One is we all want more money, right? We all want to get paid more money. And so that argument's not going to hold water. There is a market rate. I'm not sure who does it, but it typically, like the last couple of years, it's been about 3.5%. But increases, and employees need to understand this, it's not just me wanting a 10% raise, it's what my organization can afford. So if you combine your budget process and you look at what money you have for the year for increases, you look at what the market is recommending, and then you look at performance, then that's how you come up with increases. And it is an employee's market, but I don't like when somebody holds you hostage. And if somebody's at the top of their range, then I would be taking a look at, do they need to go into a new role? Or have they done everything they can do? Or is it time for them to move on? And I hate to be that callous, but I'm always hearing that. And somebody's not paid. But remember that increases are a combination of what the market is recommending, what an organization can afford. Like you're saying, if you can't afford increases one year, you can't afford increases one year. Even this wonderful paper manufacturer, we had a couple of years where we didn't get increases. You know, it's just life. So, and if you want to talk further, reach out to me, but I hear you. It's a tough situation, but don't be held hostage.
Great, thank you. This comes from another one of our advisors here at the SBDC. I have had clients receive this paper that says they have to buy the employment posters that are required. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's a good point. There are a number of options that you can do, including you can download them for free. But yeah, find a source. There are a lot of different sources. You want but Google online and see what EEO and FLSA require. And you know, if you've got an office with a lot of employees, it's probably worth spending the money because they come and they're big and they're glossy and they're easy to read. Right now, when we're remote, what I have done over the last couple of years is download them and save them into a folder and say to all of our employees, all of the employment posters are in this folder. So yeah, you do want to share that. That's important.
Great, thank you. How do we become a company that people want to work for? Are there resources that dives more into this topic?
Talk to anybody who's in HR. And talk to them about what we're seeing. And, you know, think about what kind of organization you are. And if you're the leader and you think it's a wonderful place to work, don't assume that. Do pulse checks with your employees. Put out little survey monkey surveys and say, okay, what's it like to work here? What do you like? What do you not like? Get feedback from your employees because that's where you're going to get your good information. And, you know, it's not something that you can change with the flip of a switch, but do get input and think about what are things that you can do that maybe don't cost a lot of money that might have a big impact.
Great, thanks. I have two more questions. Do you have time for that today?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. What are the best companies to check on if you want to hire a company to take over all your HR functions?
Oh, interesting. Interesting. There are a number of organizations out there and there are none that I can like say, oh my goodness, you got to go do this company. But I would say to you, you know, if you're small, it makes sense. If you're larger, I'm not so sure it makes sense to outsource HR. But if you're going to talk to different businesses, ask other people, ask other organizations who they use, and then go talk to them and find out what services they provide and what they charge. And that's how I would do it. I've got a couple of clients who work with one organization. At first, I didn't like this organization. And then the more I got to know them, I realized that they really did provide a lot of services. and it was perfect for this 7-employee organization. So just do your research, ask questions before you sign anything.
Great, thank you so much. And this is the last question. How does the employer report a nomad employee to the state? Nomad employee being someone who lives in an RV and travels instead of having a house or apartment or etc.
Oh, gee, don't you just love it? Nobody makes it easy. All right, where do they get their mail? That's, and again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a CPA, but typically it's where they receive their mail. So I would talk to whoever does your taxes. I would talk to them and ask, but daggone, that's such a pain. But I would ask them, but typically it's where they receive their mail.
Great, thank you so much. And I had another question just come in and I'll answer this. So we're asked if we can provide your email address so people can follow up with you. Yes, that's going to be in the slides. We'll include that in a follow-up email after the event. So I'll go ahead and wrap us up today. Thank you, Mary Walter, so much. This has been a really awesome presentation. I just want to let everyone know you'll all receive an email with a link to the recording, like I just mentioned. You can also view, if you'd like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access the recordings, you can go to our website at virginiaspdc.org/training. All of our SBDC resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors, and you can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiaspdc.org or via our website. So thank you all so much for attending, and thank you, Mary Walter.
Thank you, Amanda, so much. I'll stay on and talk to you after everybody's gone.
All right, great. Thank you, everybody. See if I could